Tumeambia tokeni ndani ya msitu.
Hata kraoni gani iliyoko huko out. Hata kraoni gani, kraoni ya hapa, hata hii ya hapa itoke.
Sisi ni serikali na ndio tutapanga sawasawa. Manake wale walioko kule mahali pa kukaa tutawapatia.
Mtu anatoka nje au viongozi wanaotoka nje na kuja kusema kwa Rift Valley watu wafanye hivi, watu wafanye namna hii. Hakuna wanaume na viongozi katika Rift Valley.
Wale watu wanaoishi katika sehemu hii wako na stakabadhi ya umilikaji ardhi, yani title deed. Wakae sawa sawa kwa sababu wako na haki ya kuishi katika sehemu hii.
Lazima kuuliza watu hata mambo ya mao. Hapana weza uketi kuona kwamba watu wataondoka kwa njia gani, pole pole mahali gani watasongezwa, watasukumwa watu mahali catchment ya mali maji ati eviction. Unakuondoa mtu, watu ni paka na panya. Msitu sasa inachomeka kila mahali, miti inakatwa kama inavyo, na wanasema mao.
Right, that was of course museum there, and the Mao issue, and of course from the archives as well we have this particular picture here in 1965. This is the opening ceremony of the Kenyatta College. All right, do we have any alumni of Kenyatta University in this panel as well? This was when it was inaugurated, all right, Kenyatta College. And you can see Yuko Inange there, President Jomo Kenyatta. Do you remember this particular, if you may go back to our history? The person who was speaking was the first, was the second Prime Minister? No, he was actually UK High Commissioner to Kenya. And this is Malcolm MacDonald. Yeah, in 1965.
He was the last governor of Kenya.
Yeah. And also the insert, you can see pictures there. You can see there's a man here in shades behind the aide camp of Jomo Kenyatta. Is that Tom Boyer?
He looks like Badilu.
He looks like Badilu system.
1965.
This was 1965. Yeah, from our archives as well. Thank you so much. And of course, that we can see the debate on climate change. Well, we began this debate way back, and we can see Mao was a hot topic as well. And we saw sentiments from the president, we saw sentiments from the then also the prime minister, we saw sentiments from some of the legislators as well, from the Maasai land as well. And Timama, they are talking about the issues just to do with our environment and conservation of our environment. And we are suffering from the brunt of not really taking care of our environment as well. And this is why we're having this conversation on a raft of other issues with our senators here. By the way, they've been given a 2-week break. So if none of them really attends this particular conference, we shall hold them accountable. Why are they a no-show? Yeah, Dan, were you there yesterday for the inaugural meeting? At least Tabitha has told us she went there. Yes. I don't know if it was Congo Mogini. We took a special recess for a 2-week break to attend.
You know,
this particular, so you have no excuse.
We elevated you to the position of speaker. There are some questions that the speaker does not ask
you. No, but I wasn't able to attend because we had a very important function. The presiding bishop of the Methodist Church,
yes,
was being inducted on Sunday. And he comes from a very small village in Tana River County. And it was a big celebration because it had never happened. And in my remarks, I said, congratulations, presiding bishop, and this is the way we should go. Minority people can also take important positions in this country and give us the kind of solutions and leadership that we require. So yeah, after that it was too late to go because it was a function that lasted that day, but today we will be there. But coming to climate change, Dibal, there is, like you've shown, the debate has been there for many years.
Yes.
And the thrust of these current discussions now is that the proposals towards change in the discussion is that we leave the idea that these Europeans, these Americans, these Chinese, these Russians are the biggest contributors to the pollution, and therefore they should make reparation. We change that debate from Africa expecting something from them because it's a punishment for you polluting the air, and as we are clean, changing that debate from a donation or donor kind of mentality thing to saying that let us come to the table. We want to be part of the solution. We are not going to be beggars. We want to be people who are making decisions on that table. And how do we do that? We want you to realize that we have potential to do the carbon sinks, but we are not giving it to you for free. So as we want to trade in this with our carbon sinks. We have the resources. So you people, for so many tons of CO2, carbon dioxide that you emit, we are able to exchange that with our carbon sinks, and you pay us so many dollars. So we have the solution in Africa, and you are the polluter. So you sell your pollution to us, you will sink. You give us so many dollars, and we agree, country to country, nation to nation, continent to continent. So that we are not asking you to give us a donation. We are asking you to buy from us our capacity to sink that carbon. Okay? And this is where the conversation should be. That I'm bringing it now to Kenya and to the local area. If I plant a tree, it should be converted into cash. If I am conserving the environment, it should be converted into cash. Once we put this conversation that way, that I know the man in Tana River, whoever is planting trees, whoever is conserving forest, he's getting something in return, then I'm telling you, we are winning this war. And that is why in the Senate we passed the climate change bill. And that bill, we have created a register. That register says, if you are in this carbon trade and you have registered, when Kenya has gotten its money, it will distribute. If you have this number of trees and you are on the list on the carbon registry, yes, then you will be paid for the money. You will be paid money for the trees, for the forest you are conserving, for the trees you are planting. It becomes a trade, so that it is money on the table. So instead of planting, maize, and instead of planting your coconuts and whatever, you will plant trees purposely to make money out of it. And once this thing gets into the people, that we can make money out of just planting trees, conserving our forests, and registering for payment, then I'm telling you, the war towards a cleaner environment is going to be won. So this is what Africa is saying. You're saying, we have the capacity to sink your carbon. You pay us for it. We don't want your donations. We don't want, charity. Grants, yeah. We don't want charity. We want you to pay us, because we are collecting, we are sinking that carbon emissions. And this simple idea that we are coming to the table with a solution is what is going to save us. This simple idea that Kenyans who are going to be planting tree, conserving tree, will be paid something for it, is going to be a major milestone towards combating climate change. And this is what the discussion should be. I don't want to hear these stories of, oh, I don't know, we've been given so much money, we've been given. A donation or charity is not the same as business. If we can agree that you are giving me this 20 billion because I'm sinking this number of CO2 tons that you have emitted in China, you have emitted in Russia, you have emitted in the US, so you are paying me. It is much better than saying, okay, I'm giving you a grant for $2-3 billion, go and plant trees. It's not the same. But if I'm giving you something to trade and you're paying me for what I have offered, then we are talking as equals. The supplier and the purchaser. So it's demand and supply economics. This is what should be on the table. This is what should be discussed. And this is what Europe and those big polluters have not wanted to discuss. And that's why this climate change discussion for Africa was very, very critical, so that Africa can say, look, we have something we are offering. It is not charity, it is not your grants we want. Buy the carbon sinks at a good rate so that all of us can benefit. You are polluting, we are absorbing. And then we exchange on the table.
Indeed.
Pay us good money. Let us have an international carbon trade exchange mechanism so that everyone benefits. If this is agreed, then London will not have to come here, Moscow will not have to come here to tell us we are donating for you 2-3 million. When we know that if we cost these things properly, it should be $3-4 billion. That should come to Kenya,
but
Tanzania.
Let's begin where the donation is right now. Now that you have the 44 billion shillings so far, because sometimes even auditing this climate change sort of efforts that have been put on the ground can be very, very difficult, because how do you audit the seedlings? How many are they? So will we be opening another spawning ground for corruptions within county, where also the senators will not, what sort of an oversight mechanism will you come up with to put track on the 44 billion shillings if it has been effected and accounted for its purpose? Because we've seen right now even legislators went to some of the donors, I think it was PEFA, and they were complaining that, you know, do not disburse these funds because these funds will be promoting abortion. It will be seen to be, you know, escalating the issues of the pro-choice, pro-life debate that has been there before. So when it comes to the grants and oversight of this particular eye-popping figure, 44 billion shillings is a lot of money. Yeah, so what will the Senate be actually be putting in place to make sure they're putting track as far as this climate financing is concerned?
Well, there's something very positive in Kenya about our laws so far, and the 2010 Constitution brought in the climate issue very well. Article 42 is about environment, and every person has a right to clean and healthy environment, which includes, you know, to have environment protected, you know, for the benefit of present and the future generations through legislative and other measures, particularly those contemplated in Article 69. And it goes on about 12 obligations relating to the environment fulfilled under Article 70. So later on, 69 and 7 talks about it. And then we have environmental law in the country. Recently now we have the Climate Change Act, which Senate passed. I want to agree with you. The good thing with the law we passed, it talks about crimes committed against this climate change. You know, people fraudulently now misuse this money or pretend to have planted the trees which they have not, and they are going to claim. That law has tried to cover that. But the most important thing is that what Honorable Mogatana is talking about is a bigger thing. You see, in Africa, we are not polluting as in China and as in industrialized nations. So when they pollute, it all goes, even when jets, flights move, planes move. Nowadays, even there are international conventions that you can now transport heavy goods with the planes because they emit more carbons, you know, to the space. So those ones, there is a preference that they get shipped, and there is every effort to reduce the effects on the ozone layer, because when the ozone layer is affected, there is global warming, and then you have all these floods, and you have the La Nina and El Nino effects, which affect all of us. Floods affect everybody. Heat waves affect everybody. So it's a bigger thing, it's a bigger responsibility for bigger nations. So when those nations make a donation to us, we have to make sure that that donation is properly done. And that's why I was saying, it must be in the budget. It must, when it goes to the counties, the county assemblies must oversight. And then the Senate deals with the audited accounts. We must come up with a method of transparency to make sure that this is effected. But more important, as I've said, there's a national government role, with the Minister of Environment. And then there is a counties, each county has a CEC in charge of environment, lands, and those things. So we really need to make it a responsibility of everybody, from the governors to the senators to the people themselves, to make sure that the people, first of all, take charge and take responsibility. And the leaders must lead by example. We should know how much trees each leader has planted or headed to plant. And the problem in Kenya is not just even planting a tree and just watering at that ceremony, and then the next 1 week it is not watered, and in 14 days it is dead. We want these seedlings, to have research in it, so that we know what trees grow naturally in Tana River or in Makueni, so that we are forest with that. And then come up with the systems to make sure that now when it comes to these carbon credits, then there is transparency. Not many Kenyans are understanding what carbon credits are. The Honorable Mragatana has tried to explain. Those who pollute, they pay for polluting. And those who are cleaning up the pollution, they should also be paid. So this should be a very big commercial enterprise. Not just about donations of 44 billion. And then a year later, only a quarter of that money has gone into planting trees and fighting, fighting the carbon emissions. It should be, there are no structures. There's a lot of talk now, but very little structures to make sure that we can secure clean environment, as our constitution says, for everybody and even for future generations. A lot of diseases have come out of this pollution.
Of course. Very
expensive to treat people. Lives have been lost. So I think it's something we need even to teach from primary schools.
Indeed, with the curriculum.
Every school should have trees. Every home should have trees. But more important, even the churches and places of worship, that the seedlings should be distributed through schools, so that children go home, carry seedlings. But who is developing these seedlings? Why are we abandoning our researchers? We need to come up with a research center so that the best seeds can be hatched. And the trees are planted all over the place. And there are a lot of other international laws which needs to be checked and counter-checked. You cannot just carry seedlings from one country to another. There is a lot of legalists there, and you may find yourself arrested. Like, for example, we don't have this beautiful Japanese tree in the city of Nairobi. When you go to Washington about April and many other cities of the world, you find this bright tree which brightens the city and then very soon greens the city. We need to come up with that so that we have all these trees which can adapted to the local climate and can do best naturally, so that we can have effective of this, we can make it effective.
Now that we have this particular fund, we can talk about compensation, Senator Tabitha, because we have David Omondi, Dr. David Omondi Owino and John Mwariri, who have sued the government because of the impacts of climate change flooding in Lake Baringo. And when we see such kind of funds that are devolved right now to the counties, and we know this is for the community resilience and all, will such cases fly? Because people now will be thinking it's a responsibility of the government. As you've said, people have to be responsible. If there is a mission that is coming from the West and the global North is responsible for this, then a big tide of money also should be disbursed to countermand the effect and that Africa is bearing the brunt. But now here we have a local scenario where the rising lake of Baringo has flooded. People's property have been lost, been flooded, been spoiled. And now we have a Dr. Omondi who's seeking the government's compensation because of this development. First of all, maybe as a legal minds, we can try and analyze this and say, is it a force majeure? This is an act of God. Where do we begin from?
It's force majeure.
I think
and normally force majeures are not compensated.
They're not compensated. Let's say from Tabitha Mutina, then also Kongo Mogini.
Yeah, I like the way you've just put that across, and also, as we permitted you to be the speaker for today, you've also given us direction, because also the speaker gives direction. So you're doing well. You're doing well, Libal. But just on the same, you know, this is a clear example in terms of if we do not continue taking care of our environments, then in future, then we'll be in the same status quo of the floods and many other issues pertaining that. So it is the high time we look at the climate change very broadly. When we began, one of our colleagues here said that you know, government is just out there, I mean, doing all this. Is it necessary? They should be doing other things. But it all starts by a conversation. It all starts by awareness. It all starts by bringing it closer to the people and being much more practical. And I'm so proud, you know, today as a country here, also hosting this big climate summit, knowing very well that UNEP headquarter is in this capital city in Nairobi. This is where it is based. So it's a big pride as a country for us to be able to champion, and it is a high time as leaders we keeping on talking about it, and we have now to change our strategy and go even to mashinani level and make our local people be able to understand when we talk about carbon credits, what are we really talking about. And in a layman language, as Senator Mungatana has put it, it's willing buyer, willing seller, and then there's a commodity here, which in a nutshell, explaining to my grandmother, I would say, plant a tree. That tree will be able to bring out, you know, the CO2, and in that, then it goes back to the, you know, soil, and it like that. So the number of trees you planted and all that, it's a benefit. It's actually money making, and that is what we want to encourage. And it has to start by voicing out. Plans have been put in place, and I'm happy because I sit in one of the oversight committees in Senate, and these are things that we are looking forward as far as funds for climate change. We are going to oversight and be able to get to ensure that there is more impact. The funds that have been put in the counties through grants, they've been mostly on water sector, whereby counties have been really encouraged to dig more boreholes, to dig more more boreholes for the people in those particular regions. But as far as the funding for climate change is concerned, it requires, as my colleagues have said, the emphasis of the tree planting factor. And Senator Mahanza has talked about how do we plant this tree? How then do we take care of this tree that has been planted? How do we ensure it germinates to its maturity and it's much more impactful to the end result that it's supposed to achieve? And I want to say that the other day I was here, I mentioned about my bill, that is the Agricultural Livestock Extension Service Bill.
Yes.
This bill is going to be very impactful nationally because it gives the opportunity for research. It also gives the opportunity in terms of the officers directing the right tree to be planted in this particular region, the right fertilizer, the right germination process, the right take care, the pesticides. It's all encompassed in this particular bill. So I'm very grateful because when I brought it to Senate, my colleagues really embraced it very well, and they passed it. It's supposed to be coming for the second reading, but it's going to give a solution long term in terms of how do we take care. Because, you know, we don't want also as a country to sing about tree planting, but we are not really having the actual, we are not really guiding. CBC has come on board, and I'm happy because our children in the learning institutions from the lower level, they are being taught on how to do, it practically, the agriculture, because you see we are in a digital space whereby it's all about the gadgets and all that, and we need to go back and really emphasize in terms of nature, because it is very key and very important. Also not forgetting Dibal, on the bill that was signed off by the president, I think on Friday, the climate change amendment bill. Yes. And the amendment much more was on the carbon credits, the framework, the revenues. And we also voiced out as we were doing our debate and talked about there needs to be openness. It needs to be in the open database in terms of who are these beneficiaries, how much are they benefiting, what is the process also of ensuring that there is transparency in all this. So through that, then we are going to reduce corruption, because you asked about it. Is it not going to give room for avenues of corruption here and there if there are no correct system? But it's through the Ministry of Environment, through CS4bn, then where they make the policies, then this bill gives guidance. And if we did not want it to give guidance, we would not have really tried to put more time in ensuring that we pass it on time. And the main aim of passing is to ensure that there is going to be maximum benefit and encouragement of Kenyans, and even across Kenya, East Africa, abroad, all African nations. We have a great opportunity as far as revenue and finance for carbon credit is concerned. It's big, it's massive. It's the high time we continue embracing. And I want to say also, this event is giving us a very good name. You look at the whole event in KSCC, as I said yesterday, I was there. And I'm telling you, Dibal is just so beautiful, because at times when you travel out there to attend conferences, this is what we see. This is it's out there, you know, and it's happening here. And one thing, as I said earlier, that is so coming out is the president's speech in Midrand, whereby even our counterparts from the other parliamentarians, Uganda, or name it, Ghana, wherever, they keep on resonating with that particular speech, and they feel at home. They feel it's great, because when we interacted yesterday, we had a caucus, we had our own 10 parliamentarians, and you know very well tomorrow we have a very big day, the final day. We're having a debate in the National Assembly. We're going to be able to discuss and give views on matters of climate change. And this is something that we pride as a country, where we are looking at Nairobi, how beautiful it is, how peaceful it is right now, and having our visitors. Definitely it gives more room for bilaterals in terms of different opportunities in terms of investments for our people, because they find that we've given them a good space, a good environmental space that offers them to be able to resonate and see how to come to Kenya, and how do they, we work together.
Thank you.
Before I forget also, Dibal, one of the key issues the president was also advocating for was visa-free borders in us, in terms of the bigger than the COMESA, bigger than East Africa, which is something that is going to open room for us as Kenyans and other countries to be able to do more business in future. Right,
thank you. And of course, I will latch on the issue of oversight with you as well, because before I raise that question, I wanted to ask also to just interrogate that issue of the compensation bit. Thank you, Tabitha, because a listener who will be listening to what Pongatana is saying and what this climate summit is all about, compensation, that you should be responsible for the vagaries of climate change that we're facing, because we are emitting 3%, yet the whole chunk of the climate change effects is coming from the West. We'll wonder then how, from my county level, like what I'm talking about, Dr. Mondi and John Mwariri, who are suing the government, the emission that is coming especially from Nairobi City, because we don't take an audit of that as well. We had a national environmental agency saying that we're going to mount up smoke detectors in the city for even the fuel guzzlers, and how they're emitting and they're polluting the environment. A person who's listening and they think the government is not taking responsibility and should be sued. And when we're talking about force majeure, and I know Dr. Omondi, he is a well-informed person, and he has considered all these views of force majeure and the act of God going to court. Tell us, why should we be suing other jurisdiction and holding them accountable, yet on our own jurisprudence here, we cannot sue the government?
You know, Dibal, we have very proactive constitution, and it gives rights to any person. You don't, you know, when we started practicing law, there's something you used to call local standard. You know, you must be directly affected before you go to court. But the current constitution is very, very liberal. And I like what that director is doing, because it's good to break new barriers, you know. I mean, it's good to go to court, test, create new jurisprudence. I mean, that's why people go to school. That's why we have lawyers calling themselves learned friends. I like that. And you know, in Kenya, we have a special court called Land and Environment Court that is supposed to take care of our environment, listen to disputes relating to environment. We have a whole chapter in our constitution dedicated to protection of environment. In fact, if you read Article 70, enforcement of environmental rights, you know, anybody has a right to file an application, go to court to prevent, stop, discontinue an act or an omission that is harmful to the environment. And C talks about compensation of victims. So let's not rule out that case. It could be a precedent-setting case. You know, one of those that goes to court rules and we set a precedent because the government has an obligation. You know what you're mentioning about putting cameras? People may think like it's dream, you are daydreaming. But that's what the mayor of London has done. If you drive into the city, a vehicle emitting some, maybe it's a diesel vehicle or something, the camera will pick it up and you will get a ticket on your address that you drove into the city, your vehicle is not compliant, you went to the Ulex zone and you get a ticket. That's what we need to do. So these guys in Baringo, I've not seen the details, the facts of the case. Let's see how it's grounded. Maybe they have scientific evidence, you know, that they are built up with time. Let that matter go to court. Let's test our jurisprudence. We see what's the outcome. It could be that defense Senator Mgatana has said can be available to the states, or it may not be, depending on the facts that they're armed with when they go to court. What scientific evidence are they going to put forward when they go before court? That's a good one. Let's wait and see. Let's not speculate how the court will rule. Let's give room to the judges to sleep over it. Now, issue of this money going to counties. You know, our governors can be merciless and ruthless with public money. We have had grants, including grants to support agriculture. Last time we were auditing my account of Nyamira. Somebody brought receipts showing that they were sleeping in a hotel in Nyamira where they were paying 30,000 a night. Yet there is no
There's
hotel,
no foster there.
There is no hotel that can charge you not even 10,000. So, I mean, if we don't track and oversight these money, you're going to create governors who will be multi-billionaires overnight. I hope my friends here will agree with the proposal that we need to enhance the capacity of the senators to have a presence on the ground and work together with MCAs so that money that goes to counties is used for intended purposes. Otherwise, you will see guys walking around in designer suits, governors, using money that has been sent to them to make a contribution on protecting our environment and contributing towards climate change. So let's support senators to have more presence in our counties in terms of oversighting this money. Let us support our MCAs and also our anti-corruption bodies, EACC. You know, 12 years into devolution, not even one governor has gone to jail. Deval. How do you deter people who have these tendencies of stealing public money if there is no deterrence? If you have people going to court, they are tried, charged, convicted, and they go to jail, that is the only way there will be deterrence. Otherwise, it's almost becoming fashionable to steal public money. You know, all the money that goes to counties is like a certain percentage must go to the pockets of certain governors. There are some who are really doing a good work, all good intentions, but others really are really, misappropriating public funds. Finally, this is all about how our government rolls up its sleeves and goes to work. You know, even if you talk about electric vehicles, if my friend Maanzo buys one today, where will you charge it? There are no charging points anywhere in the city.
And electricity is very expensive.
Yeah, you know, countries that have done this have planned ahead. And you know, this is not us. As we are lawmakers. It's the government that should think ahead, be proactive. The thing you spoke about, the railway.
Yes.
You know, when we were doing this in Nairobi here, what was Ethiopia doing? To Djibouti? Electric line.
Yes.
Electric line. Our friends in Tanzania, what are they doing?
Electrifying it.
But in Nairobi, our line here cost 1.5 times more than the Ethiopian line. Yet we are using these archaic engines. So as a country, we need to be serious. Really. We need to be serious and, as I said, walk the talk. Otherwise, we'll just be doing this for the show.
Indeed.
But when you go to the ground, things are different.
Things are different. Because we're raising this out of COP27. I think there was some good amount of money that was dedicated to, especially, I don't know if it was Africa or Kenya. And this was also disbursed to the counties. And I remember we had Governor Otichelo, who is in the COG, I think, holding the docket of environment. He's an environmentalist. So the question is, how then did we keep tabs of that money that we got from COP27? Now we want to come up with a Nairobi declaration, take it to COP28, accountability for those funds, you as senators as well. How did that really pan out? How do we explain how it was spent? How do we do an audit of that particular fund? Let's just begin from there.
Maybe before I talked about the issue of audit, I wanted to just revisit this Dr. Omondi's case.
Yes, please.
You know, Dr. Omondi's case has the good side of it because it's a wake-up call that whatever we are talking about, we have to localize it and actually see that there's damage that is being done by the climate change itself. But when you look at it, and I'm not deciding, I'm not a judge deciding that case, but when you look at it, if they are to get compensation for the rising levels of Lake Baringo, we people in Tana River will also file a case saying that this excessive drought that affected us, our animals, our crops, government should also pay. The people of Makueni, the people of Mandera will also say the same thing, because like us in Tana River, when it's hot, it's very hot. When it's rainy, it's too rainy, you see. So then the effects of what is called the act of God, where do we put it now? You see, the government will have to be paying compensation for this, the rise of that lake. They will pay for excessive heat, excessive water. It will be too much. So the approach for me, the solution for me, is to deal wholesome with the question of climate change. The courts are good to wake us up and, maybe push the whole thing, but really the solution is not in the courts, and the solution cannot be in the court. The solution must be what we are doing now, discussing how do we protect our environment and make it a place we can live for this generation and another generation. How do we deal with that? And I think this climate change discussion is critical.
Right, but before you even latch deeper on this, let me ask you.
Yeah.
Even this act of God you're talking about,
yeah,
if you look at it keenly, this is not really an act of God. Can you call it an act of God? Or this is a human factor which is causing the climate change?
No.
No. You know,
you can argue.
Let's argue, because
do you want us to argue that?
But I'm saying,
who brings the rain? Which human brings the rain?
No.
Or is it those elders who pray?
You not tie us down with law, because even these laws can be reviewed.
Yes. I know.
Yes, it's not the laws of the Medes and the Persians, as we always say. These laws can be reviewed. Who brings the rain? It's God.
Yes, correct.
All right, but God has given measures on how also the rain should be. He knows that when we have a stock or a good number of trees, all that water will go up as vapor and it come down as rain. But if man cuts down the tree himself, why should we say this is an act of God? On that particular note, is it an act of God? Because this is a human factor which is causing the climate change. Why are we having this summit? Are we blaming God or we're blaming man? Let's just begin from there.
No. Let me tell you.
Seriously, because we are accusing God.
Let me answer you.
We are hiding it under the force majeure. It's an act of God. For the longest time, we blame God.
You see, let me tell you, when you go to courts, first of all, and that's why senior counsel mentioned that I hope they have some scientific research which they have done to base their case on. I hope, because in court, it's not about emotions, it's not about how nice and how much you cry. It's how you will prove your case. And if you can't, then you have to agree that it was an act of God, because you will have to present scientific evidence that actually the government, because they have sued the government was involved in cutting those trees. The government put police there to protect people cutting those trees. The government was involved. You know, that piece of evidence. So let me just tell you, we've been in those courts for many years. That case is a good case for public awareness. Like we used to file cases against Moi saying you are oppressive and what, knowing very well that we won't win, but we make a point. So this case is one of those public interest litigation that raises awareness, but when we come to legal scrutiny, it is shaky, because evidential burden of proof is not easy to discharge in this kind of case. And I can tell you it will not be easy. But having said that, we want to say what Dr. Omondi has done is a good thing, because it raises awareness. It localizes the discussion on public on climate change, what we need to do, what the effects of climate change, and therefore it gives impetus to the drive that the president has said we need 15 billion trees within the next 5 years, and it helps in raising the awareness. But in terms of loss and damage, for them to be compensated might be an uphill task.
Right.
I think the concept of an act of God has to really be redefined, because most of it, you know, when God created the world,
it has to be redefined.
Yes, it has to be redefined, because there are things you can really put as act of God, but there are others really we have caused ourselves. You know, something like lightning or earthquake, yes, that can be different. But but floods which have been caused by man, we cut down the trees. We cause, because of the carbon emissions, we cause global warming. So the waters which are preserved in the north and the cold south, the north and the south, they melt, and a lot of researchers who have gone to the north have found that things are different. There is, you know, there are scientific provings and research showing that there is global warming, and even the faster movement of the wind, causing a lot of havoc in terms of tornadoes, and some places in the world even have storms which are stormy, you know, and they damage a lot of property. Simply because somebody has been cutting trees without regulations. Therefore, we have more carbon emissions, and you can't balance the two. So I think some of the floodings and some of the things which have happened, like the big debate of Mao Forest, and there is effects on the river downstream. You know, and tourism and all those things. So I think we really must protect the water towers and must really encourage people to plant trees, especially in those areas, because the moment you remove those trees and there is erosion and there is flooding downstream, then you can blame the government for that. And
a case in point like Mau Forest.
Mau Forest, yes.
If Dr. Omondi sues the government because of Mau Forest, you left people all this chamber system on what they're actually trying to do, all the logging or the lifting of the logging as well. Yes. Don't I have a case?
They do, because the government has allowed. You know, if you look under 70, and you know we have a very good constitution. If you look under 70, Article 70, it is very clear that enforcement of environmental rights, if a person alleges that a right to clean and healthy environment recognized and protected under Article 42 has been or is likely to be, you know, denied, you see, then infringed or threatened, the person may apply to the court to redress in action to any other legal remedies that are available in respect of the same matter. There's then on application under clause 1, the court may make any order or give any direction it considers appropriate, you know, to prevent or stop, and then goes to compel any public officer to take measures to prevent, and then to provide compensation. See, compensation for any victim of a violation of the right to clean and healthy environment. And 3, for the purposes of this article, an application that does not have to demonstrate that any person has incurred loss or sufficient injury personal. You know, that used to be the standard before. When you go to court, you must have what you call local standard. The courts must have jurisdiction, and that will be argued and argued. So it means if a community like that has suffered because somebody has cut trees upstream and the government did not regulate the cutting of the trees, and now Baringo has flooded, schools are sunk, and people's businesses are sunk, and the government prevented the cutting of trees and the chamber systems and all that. That water would have sunk, you know, slowly into the ground, and you know, the climate would have been regulated. So we really must protect, and the government must take the lead in making sure that the climate is preserved. It should not be the first one to order the cutting of trees in the wrong places.
I want us just to...
You know that environment court, just to show you how can I say, innovative they are. You know, there is a case that was filed by a group of Kenyans, and their course of action was that the government has not put in place measures to ensure that they have a clean environment along our highways. The reason being that they have not built public toilets. You know, you know, the court actually has issued order that the government has an obligation as a way of maintaining a clean environment to ensure that there are public toilets along our highways. And you know, this is what the Americans did in the 40s during the presidency of Roosevelt in the US, because blacks used to drive all the way along those highways with no public toilets at all. But the government of Roosevelt put in place measures to ensure that there are public toilets. Now the court I told you, Land and Environment, has issued an order that as a way of protecting and ensuring that there is a clean environment, the government should build public toilets along our highways. So, as I said, let that case go to court. Let us test how the court will apply and interpret the Constitution. Then from there, if we need to file as many cases as we can, why not? The obligation.
The distinction I want to
the obligation.
You see, in the US,
you know, the obligation to put in place measures to protect and control is with the government. Is the government to pass laws? Is the government to appoint officers to enforce? Is the government that should put in place measures to ensure that we don't cut trees to ensure that our farming protects rivers downstream or our lakes. That obligation is with the government, not with us citizens.
All right.
There's an example in the U.S. You see, along the highways in the U.S. there are forests, there are trees planted there. So that when snow falls, it doesn't completely cover the highway and is not blown into the highway. You see now, if the government allows or does not maintain those forests along the highways, people will not completely move during the snowing time in the U.S. And it's a good example of how a government should be responsible to make sure people don't suffer injury out of negligence by the government.
Right. So I wanted to come to Senator Tabitha, unless you wanted to chime in on that, but because you're talking about you being in a committee. And when we come to the National Assembly, we come to Senate, we find there is no dedicated committee, aside from the environment, that you have environment and it has so many layers of things that are under environment. Don't you think now that we have come up and now we have even the Climate Change Act that has been amended, there's a national registry of the carbon credits, all right? Don't you think we need a dedicated committee from National Assembly and the Senate
yeah,
that is dedicatedly concerned with the issues to do with climate change? That even when we have cases of Omondi, that can actually come as a memorandum directly to that committee. I don't know if because that's will be affecting both people in the counties, like this is a Baringo County, and the National Assembly. That can be a complementary. Instead of having a caucus, you have caucus on SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. It does not give that important weight to the issue at hand that we're facing, because this is a global menace and a phenomena that we're facing.
I wanted to pick it up from where the discussion was, but allow me to start from your question in terms of the committees, the climate change. And I want to state that currently we have caucuses, both at the National Assembly and Senate, caucuses that have chair. Like in Senate, the chair is Senator Kajwang, who's the chair of the Climate Change Caucus. In the National Assembly, we have Mheshimiwa Kanambi, who's also the chair, Climate Change, and that's how they've been able to champion matters climate change. The discussion we were having yesterday, there were the leads, and that is what we have currently.
But what is the difference between the caucus and a committee? Does it carry the same weight?
It doesn't carry the same weight, yes, I agree, but that is what we have currently. Yes, I want to agree, moving forward, it's something that we can be able to embrace, so that we just don't impact it so much with the Committee for Land, Environment, Natural Resources, so that there's just a committee, climate change, that is independent, that is able to ensure that all these frameworks, all these policies that are in place, all these benefits in future are going to be put in place. So it's a good thing both in future for National Assembly and Senate to be able to have separately climate change committees. That is okay.
The future is now.
Yes,
the President said, welcome to the future.
Exactly.
So it begins.
Now, as I continue, because Senator Manzo, you've had your time, and you know, I let you have your time. You know, these are my seniors. They've talked about the issue of the lift.
Sorry, it's 8 o'clock on the nose. It's the station break time. Can I circle back with you?
Okay.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry for that. I should have actually warned you that yes, we're due for a station break, but I can see it's 8 o'clock, so that we circle back with you. We continue with that conversation on the issues to do with the matters of Senate and the climate change. There's an issue of the whole 44 billion shillings has been disbursed, and a lot of money as well will be coming their way. But accountability also remains a niggling worry, especially when it comes to the counties as well. And that's why we're having this conversation. We continue on the other side of the break. Don't go away.